Hey people, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to have a look at the contactor. What are contactors in relation to what we're talking about in this course? A contactor is basically an electromechanical switch. There's a lot of different types, but the main type that we will be focusing on is a contactor that provides power to a three-phase motor. So how does it work? So it's basically a switch, right? But instead of being like a light switch that switches one active phase to turn a light on and off, the contactor switches three phases through three separate contacts, as we can see here. L1, T1, L2 to T2, and L3 to T3. And instead of turning it on and off with our finger, like a light switch, we turn it on and off with an electrical signal that is provided to the coil inside the contactor. Now, as well as three main poles being switched, we also sometimes have auxiliary contacts, like these ones here. Here is a normally open contact that runs through to here. And here is a normally closed contact that runs through to here. These are used for other stuff that we will find out about later in the course. Don't worry. If you don't have enough auxiliary contacts, no problems. Just clip in an extra auxiliary block that operates at the same time as the other contacts. Now, how does it work? Well, when we provide the correct voltage to A1 and A2, these are the coil control terminals. The coil inside the contactor is energized. It pulls in the contacts and activates the auxiliaries. When the coil is de-energized, the spring pushes against the base and opens the contacts and deactivates the auxiliaries. Okay, that's pretty simple. Now the ratings of the contactor. The coil voltage is 240 volts, 50 or 60 Hertz, or 230 volts, 50 Hertz on this contactor. And with AC contactors such as this one, it doesn't matter which way around we connect to our A1 and A2 coil terminals with respect to active and neutral. If it were a DC contactor, then instead of an A1 and A2, we would have positive and negative coil terminals. And obviously the positive and negative need to be connected the right way around. Now, the capacity of the contactor. Most motor contactors will have an AC3 rating. This relates to the size of the squirrel cage motor that the contactor can handle. In other words, this rating tells us what size motor this contactor can switch on and off. Here, this contactor has an AC3 rating of 4 kilowatts at 400 volts and 2.2 kilowatts at 230 volts. This means that this contactor can operate a motor up to the size of 2.2 kilowatts if the motor is supplied with 230 volts, or a motor the size of 4 kilowatts if it's supplied with 400 volts. Remember our motor we looked at previously? It drew more current when it was supplied with less voltage depending on whether it was wired in star or delta. That's why the contactor is rated for a smaller motor with less voltage running through it because of the difference in current. Now this rating is only for the three power contacts that switch power to the motor: L1, L2, and L3. The auxiliary contacts are only rated to handle smaller control currents, usually up to 400 volts and up to about 6 amps. But each brand of contactor will differ a little bit, so make sure you read the specification sheet before you wire these things up in the field. Okay guys, that's basically the gist of a motor contactor. We will learn how to use them as the course goes on. So I'll catch you in the next lesson. Cheers.